Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of It's Just Racing, hosted by Jim and Jim. I'm Jim,
And I'm Jim.
and we're here to talk about racing. We're going to do things kind of out of order today, as far as chronologically. Going to start off with Supercross, as I do every week, even though that happened Saturday, and there was all kinds of stuff that happened before Saturday. But I'm a creature of habit, so I'm going to start off with Supercross. Supercross was in Detroit last weekend. 250 heat race winners were Nate Thrasher and Levi Kitchen. The 450 heat race winners were Jason Anderson and Chase Sexton. The 250 LCQ was won by Austin Faulkner, and the 450 LCQ was won by Grant Harlan. 250 main event time. Max Anstey dominated the race. He got the whole shot. He led the entire thing. He had a 5, 6, 7-second lead, and Cameron McAdoo lost it in the whoops and crashed. Guy's already racing with a torn ACL. Ended up hitting his face on the handlebars and then in the ground, and he's good to go. Had to get some stitches, but he will be racing again this week.
I'm kind of surprised that he wasn't concussed. That was quite the shot he took.
He probably is. They just won't tell anybody. It's racing. Bad thing with that is it happened with like 7 seconds left before the timer expired. In Supercross, they run a certain amount of time. I believe it's 15 minutes.
Yes, it's 15 for the 250s.
And then there's 2 laps to go after that time runs out. So there was like 7 seconds left. So there went Max Anstey's lead. They do a staggered restart, which is basically second place is directly behind first. Third is right behind second. So the lead was gone. They restarted, had a 3-lap shootout. Levi Kitchen was over to pass Max right away. They finished Levi Kitchen first, Anstey second, and RJ Hampshire third.
Now I was interested to see what Max Anstey had to say in the post-race interview because he really got a tough break with that red flag. If they had waited those extra 7 seconds to throw the red, I believe the race would have been called at that point and he would have won. But he was very gracious on the podium, and he didn't seem too upset by it, so I guess I'm all right with it too.
Oh, and it was a safety thing, yeah. You don't know how bad McAdoo was going, face first into the bars, and he's just laying out in the middle of the track with blood running down his face.
Yeah, I suppose you got to tend to that.
I'm fine with them stopping it. I mean, it sucked for Anstey, but he's still got the points lead. Kitchen's in second, Tom Vial's in third. Chance Hymas has had a really quiet year, but it's only been 2 races. He's still hanging on in fourth, and Nate Thrasher's in fifth in points. Moving on to the 450s. This kid, Chase Sexton, he would be so good if he didn't just keep making mental mistake after mental mistake. He won his heat race, I believe. Yeah, he won his heat race. And he jumped the start. So he got hung up in the gate. So he was dead last from the start. And then he ran into the back of somebody else when he finally caught the field and fell down. So then he was even deader last. So dude ends up passing 18 other riders and still finishes third. Cooper Webb won it, Ken Roxon was second, and Sexton came and finished third. It was a hell of a ride by Sexton. But this kid, he would have probably 3 championships under his belt right now instead of just the one if he could just get his head together and ride. It's kind of a shame, but you always know, hey, Chase is in the lead. He's probably going to crash, and he often does. He didn't even get a chance to start without messing up this time.
Yeah, with Jet Lawrence out, I thought that Sexton was going to be the clear favorite to win the championship. But I mean, Cooper Webb, Ken Roxon, they had a real nice, respectful, clean battle for the lead. Do you like to see that from a couple of experienced riders? And
You can say
yeah,
old. A couple old guys. Gosh, they both got to be in their 30s, I think, huh?
probably right around there.
Yes, that's old for motorcycle racing, at least this kind. So yeah, points are tied. Chase Sexton and Cooper Webb. Um, Ken Roxon is in third. Jason Anderson is in fourth, and Malcolm Stewart is hanging on to fifth. Now we can move on to some NASCAR action for you. The truck race was Friday. It was pretty uneventful. Much better than last year's race that had 12 cautions. Well, technically 10. Two of them were for stage breaks. 19 laps to go. There was a wreck. Daytona's narrow. Trucks don't handle. You can't go four wide. One of the Thor Sport trucks, I believe it was Ben Rhodes, tried to go high against the wall and hooked somebody. Most of them were able to continue on, and then there's the typical chaos on the final lap. Everybody crashed. Parker Kligerman won, and then was disqualified for his ride height being too low in the rear. His team did file a protest with NASCAR. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not that hard to read a tape measure. The truck was too low. And Corey Heim ended up with the win.
I had a couple notes, a few things I noticed about this race. The truck handling seemed to be a little tricky, especially for some of the newer racers. I noticed three different times trucks spun by themselves, it looked like, coming off of corner exit. Caden Honeycutt spun from the lead early on. Tony Breitinger did a little later after that. And then Clay Greenfield also spun by himself.
No relation to Grant either.
No?
No. Just Clay.
So I think that really demonstrated how difficult it still is, even when you're running wide open around these tracks. You know, the handling's not always there. You got to have some experience to keep it straight.
Well, I think, from people I've talked to and what I've heard, that the trucks are probably the hardest to drive out of the three NASCAR main series. They don't have the aero that everybody else has. And there's something with the track. It seemed, weren't all of those spins coming, they were like right in the middle of four, coming off of turn four?
I think the first two were coming off at 2, and then Greenfield was off of 4, but that was a bigger one because he hit the wall.
All right. Well, I'm going to take a little time to talk about the ARCA race. I'm not going to talk much about ARCA this year, don't worry. Well, unless you're into ARCA, then worry, because I'm not going to talk about it. There's really not a lot going on in ARCA. Last year, it was William Sawalich and Connor Zilich just basically took turns winning every race that they decided that they were going to show up for. And just not a lot. Sawalich was in this race, but it was a poor excuse for a race. I don't know, I'm calling it a race. Cody Dennison started off the action, got himself loose, overcorrected, drove into the wall, wrecked like 15 cars, and there was a red flag for that. They finally got restarted. Lap 13, Amber Balkin got loose in the exact same spot, caused a wreck, took out some cars. Not picking on Amber, but she lost it in the same spot again. Yeah, and collected a few more cars on that one. There were trucks. There were 19 trucks left on the lead lap halfway through the race. They do a halfway break. It was supposed to be at lap 40. I think they ran to lap 45 or so. But they couldn't get to the break because one lap before the halfway break, Isabella Robusto, she got a bad push, got turned into the wall, collected a handful. That sucked. She was having a great race. She's someone to look out for. She can actually drive, and she was in the top 3, top 4 all race long until that point, and that ended her night. Then they had the mid race break. Somebody must have been yelling at everybody. They must have had a little impromptu radio drivers meeting because everything was pretty clean after that break. There were a couple single car spins, but there wasn't any ridiculousness until afterwards. Somehow, sixth place decided to pit fifth, and they wrecked after the checkered flag. Less than half the cars finished. I think there were like 15 on the lead lap and maybe 18 finished. Butterbean won. Brendan Queen, he won, so people were happy about that. Cletus McFarlane was in the race. He wrecked, but apparently that was the highlight, was his interview. Everybody loved his interview, so that's about all I have to say about ARCA, probably for the year, unless something interesting actually happens other than crashing.
Well, just to balance that out a little bit, I think the Xfinity race was the best race of the weekend. So I'll do a little recap of that. Austin Hill dominated the first half of the race, but then he had some sort of mechanical issue. And so that was unfortunate to see for him because he led like 50 laps. And he looked very strong. RCR cars always look strong at Daytona. There was a wreck at the end of stage two. Sheldon Creed, he pushed Nick Sanchez. It was a clean push. I mean, I didn't see anything wrong with the push, but Sanchez got loose, got in the wall. And typical, Daytona, it's hard to avoid that. I think that might have been just because it was one of Sanchez's first races in the car. Maybe, he just wasn't used to how the car would react, but I wouldn't really put fault on either one of the drivers there. It was just one of those deals. But then after that, I think we got to talk about Chris Wright. That crash where they were in a green flag pit cycle and everybody's going on the pit lane and he's way behind. And from his interview afterwards, it seems like the spotter told him a little late to go to pit road. But it was really late. Looking at the replay, he should have known that he wasn't going to make it and just gone another lap. Because what ended up happening was he just torpedoed Josh Bilicki going probably at least twice the pit speed while Bilicki was already on pit road. And it looked really bad.
I was surprised Bilicki was able to continue on, that the car wasn't damaged.
Yeah, I don't know how. He must have just squared it up perfectly because that was a hard hit. And I don't know. When I saw this, and I'm not sure what to think about this. Because the announcers, they were trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, saying maybe he lost brakes or something. It didn't seem like he did. And even if he did lose brakes, he had plenty of time to steer. It looked like he just went straight into Bilicki, so...
It looked like it was intentional. That there's no way that it was, but yeah, he just dive bombed and straight into Bilicki's left rear. I couldn't believe that Josh was able to continue on, and actually finish the race with a decent finish. That was interesting. I heard something about, he said he had no brakes, but you could clearly see the brakes lock up. So yeah, then they blamed it on a spotter miscommunication or something.
I mean, regardless of what happened, it's not a good look, and I hope he figures out where his braking point is or how to turn the car away from other cars or something. I don't know. After that, though, the rest of the drivers were pretty clean. Justin Allgaier did find himself sort of at the beginning of 3 different wrecks. I wouldn't really put all the blame on him, though. The first one, he had a run up the middle. Justin Bonsignor, another newer driver. I think he's a rookie this year. He might have ran a couple races last year. He made kind of a late block. Allgaier could have gone down a little more. They both kind of came together, and that started a wreck with maybe 10 laps to go. And then the second one, it set up the green-white checkered. Allgaier, he was in the middle again. The middle line had a big run. He was pushing Connor Zilic. And the outside line was losing momentum. Sheldon Creed was leading that line, and he kind of just meandered down to block.
Meandered.
Well, it was really slow. He was up top, and it was a really slow block. Like he was clearly out in front. Like there's nothing wrong with the move he did. It was just the speed difference. It was something was going to happen. What ended up happening was Zilic lifted because if he didn't, he would have spun Creed. But him lifting, Allgaier just kept going right into him. There's nothing Allgaier could have done there because there were probably 4 or 5 other cars behind him. And it's one of those points where something's going to happen. Nobody's going to lift with 2 laps left. So it causes a big crash.
Oh, except apparently Connor Zilic.
Well, yeah. I mean, he was in a bad situation. No matter what he did, he was going to get caught in the wreck. So that's tough to see his first restrictor plate race, but he'll bounce back. And then after that, we had a green-white checkered. And at the finish, which it was right after the white flag, because coming to the white flag, Allgaier, this one was his fault. He was up high this time, and he tried to go down low, and he was not clear, and just spun himself across someone. I don't know who it was, because it wrecked everybody and ended the race. But that one, it was kind of a rookie move, and his spotter should have been telling him not clear. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty good race. Jesse Love ended up winning. So the RCR team did very well, with Hill leading basically the first half and then finishing off with Jesse Love winning. So that was good to see. Yeah, that's what I've got for Xfinity.
All right. Then Daytona. We'll skip back in time to Wednesday. Daytona 500, being the big deal it is. Qualifying is on Wednesday. Only the top 2 lock in with their qualifying times. So Chase Briscoe was on the pole, and Austin Cindric qualified second. Then they have their 2 qualifying races, the duels on Thursday. On the first duel, Chandler Smith was having a heck of a run, and then he wrecked while running third. It was his fault, so can't blame anybody, but he was one of the cars that was not locked in, so he took himself out of the Daytona 500, and Justin Allgaier driving the Dale Earnhardt Jr. car. He got locked in the duel number 1. Duel number 2, Corey LaJoie got locked in. So, and then of course we had the 41st entry with the "You're a super great old racer, so we'll let you drive." Elio Castroneves made it in, even though he crashed 2 or 3 times during his duel. The race on Sunday, Daytona 500. They moved it up an hour and 11 minutes or something due to a threat of rain. 10 laps into the race, it started raining. So that didn't work. About a 4-hour delay. And they started going. Finally got some green flag laps in. 3 to go in stage 1. Denny Hamlin, Zane Smith, Josh Berry just all kind of got together. Very minimal damage to Hamlin, but Smith and Berry were done. Stage ended under yellow. Joey Logano was clearly the fastest car all night. He was the fastest car in stage 1. The start of stage 2, we found out afterwards what the issue was. He had some debris in his throttle body, so all we knew was that the car didn't go, and he was on the front row, and everybody stacked up behind him to start the second stage. 11 cars were involved in the wreck. Most of them were able to continue. 2 Trackhouse cars, Chastain and Elio Castroneves again crashed out. And Martin Truex, unfortunately, that was the end of his Daytona 500 also. And Ryan Blaney ended up winning the stage 2. Stage 3, Jim here's favorite stage because you can actually have some green flag pit stops, have a little extra excitement, play the fuel mileage game, some strategy. Nah, NASCAR threw a phantom caution. Nobody ever spoke a word about the caution. There was, 5,000 cameras looking at the track. Nobody saw the debris. The announcers never said anything about the debris. We didn't see a truck picking up the debris. So, no green flag pit stops. 15 laps to go. Ricky Stenhouse, Joey Logano.
Those are two guys you don't want to be near at the end of Daytona.
Yeah, they crashed. And they crashed out a lot of people. It was, I'm gonna blame it on Joey Logano. Yeah, Stenhouse blocked him. It was an aggressive block. Logano woed up in time. Nobody hit him. They kept racing, and Logano apparently felt that, well, he deserved that spot. So he tried sticking his Mustang into a Fiat-sized hole between two cars and wrecked everybody. It was a dumb move. It looked like he got a little bit of a push that helped him, but he put himself in that position to wreck a lot of cars, and that's exactly what happened.
I think Kyle Busch said it best in his interview afterwards. He was caught up in this wreck. You got to know how wide your car is. And Logano, I guess, didn't know that. Joey, he's a 3-time champion now. He's been around for a while. He should know better than to try to make that move with 15 laps left.
He was bad fast, too.
Yeah.
After the issue with the fuel system, he was right back up there, fighting for the win, and then just put himself in a stupid position and do stupid things. You win stupid prizes, and he won himself a trip to the infield care center, which of course he was fine. So these cars are pretty darn safe. 5 laps to go. Man, felt bad for Christopher Bell. Felt bad for all the Toyotas. Those cars can't take a push. I don't know. It's got to have something to do with the rear bumper design. But every Toyota, as soon as it got a push, was all over the place. Christopher Bell got a push and should have propelled him into the lead. Instead, it just turned him into the wall. 10-car crash. You've probably seen the highlights. Ryan Preece, once again, got upside down at Daytona. That's twice in the last 3 years. He was fine. Another weird looking wreck. The car was doing a wheelie for like 100 yards. It was nuts. They've got to do something to fix these cars. They look like slot cars underneath, so that's probably the problem because it creates a lot of lift. But I'm not a NASCAR engineer, and Ryan Preece is fine, and that's what matters, I guess. Then, of course, there's your typical chaos at the end where all the leaders crashed, and William Byron, who was in 7th place, ended up winning because the 6 cars ahead of him all crashed, and then a bunch of cars behind him all crashed. He won his second Daytona 500, and Jimmy Johnson actually finished 3rd. Didn't hear anything from him all day. He just stayed out of the chaos and just drove up to 3rd. So that's kind of neat to see somebody else with a gray beard up there doing something good.
Well, to qualify that just a little bit, there were maybe 6 cars that made it through that last wreck.
I don't know. Right? It was. I'll give him credit. He made it through.
I was surprised they didn't throw a caution there, because they wrecked right about where the bus stop is on the backstretch, and they let it go green to the line. How do you feel about that?
I think it really depends. I didn't see all the angles of the wreck. I would assume that NASCAR has spotters all over. If a car would have been upside down or if there was a hard hit, then I think they would have had to have thrown a caution just to get the safety guys out there. That was a bone of contention with a lot of fans this week, where that the races weren't ending the way they were supposed to. They were throwing cautions, 100 yards before the finish line, but I'm glad they let it go so the race could be won in the proper way. So that's all we got today. Next week we're going to do the Indy preview. Indy starts next weekend, right?
Or 2 weekends from
2
now.
weeks from now, Indy starts. Of course, we'll have Supercross and whatever else we feel like talking about. If there's something you want us to talk about, just drop us a note. And we'll see you next week.